welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here. How are you feeling this morning?
Good, thank you. Just got over a bit of a head cold, so my voice is actually almost back to normal.
Okay, wonderful. I think we've all been through the head cold recently, so I understand. Um, it's funny, I'll just open with this. We were just talking about in this tiny little studio. We're just in a little garden shed in the back of my friend's studio. This is where we do the podcast. And we were talking about the irony of interviewing you today because we've only been doing this about 3 months. And I remember the day that I reached out to my friend Ryan, who's doing the technical parts. Imagine if we got to the place with this podcast that I could interview Mary Rodwell. And that would be my pinnacle. So here we are, and here you are, and I'm so excited that you're here. And I've got so many questions. So thank you for joining us before we begin. Now, I guess my first question is, you've had a very interesting career. You've done a lot of research. You've written a lot of books. I would love to know and to share that with the world, a bit about your story getting to this point. How did you actually get to the point where you were called the alien lady? Can we hear more about that?
Well, it'll have to be a précis, obviously.
Yes.
I think what I will say is that I suppose I've always been someone who has been interested in knowing what's going on, the truth of why we're here, what's it all about, all those kinds of things. I was brought up conventionally in a very a Catholic family, Mass on a Sunday, all that kind of stuff. Very much part of that for many years until I started to question. And one of the things that caused me to question was the reincarnation side of it, because in Catholicism you can't have reincarnation. And I was hearing stories about people that, remembered past lives and, reading books and picking up and verifying it and what have you. And this started a process of exploring, what do I believe? And is that accurate? Or is there something else going on? And in between all of that, I was a nurse for a time and I was a midwife. So I was working in healing on, more conventional level. And again, these things would come up, this people that were very sick, for example. I ended up being with my family, being drawn into counseling. And the great thing with counseling is you start to see how you can prevent illness if you can help people deal with their emotional, psychological, or spiritual issues. The prevention was actually better than cure, and the cure being medicine and drugs and all the stuff we're told is the way to go. So, there's this constant evolving of understanding, let's put it like that, for me, where I'm questioning on multiple levels and looking at my work and seeing what that means. And that was opening me up all the time to the multidimensional side of human experience. And when I came to Australia, particularly, I stayed with counselling rather than go back into nursing. And it was then I did grief and bereavement counselling and working with people who were dying. And them saying to me, well, what do you think happens? If they've only got a few weeks, they're facing their mortality. I start to face my mortality as well. And saying, so what do I really understand happens if it's not the Catholic version, if there's something else? And, you start to read books on not just reincarnation, but hypnosis, where they take people into past lives. And that was resonating and intriguing me more and more. So that was when I started to open up into working with hypnosis, taking people to past lives. And the interesting thing with that was when you're taking someone from another life where they see their death, and then they're seeing their body and they're looking down on their body and saying, but now I'm somewhere else and it's beautiful and And I would say to them, what did you learn in that life? And they'd say, oh, I learned about compassion, or I learned about how to understand myself with limits, or all these things. Fascinating. Nothing about judgment and whether you're going to heaven or hell. But I learned to reappraise that life and what I gained and what I didn't do so well with. And then talking about the next life and choosing their parents, choosing their life journey. And all of this opened up into, so this makes a lot more sense to me. You know, this is, and when you hear time and time again the same things about reappraising their life and what have you. So that was opening me up more and more to a different kind of spirituality. And then from that, of course, what happened is other people's experiences. And when we get to where I am now, being called the alien lady, honoring people's experience, well, that came primarily from a documentary. My mum talks to aliens, and I remember not being very happy with the SBS titling it that and then saying, oh, we're going to change it. No, they didn't. It was my mum talks to aliens. And I became the alien lady. But now it really isn't a problem, because the bottom line is so many are communicating with non-human intelligences that this isn't actually a problem. It's just the problem for those between two paradigms. One is the metaphysical one, which is you can talk to angels, you can talk to fairies, you can talk to spirit guides, but you can't talk to a bald-headed guy with black eyes, because that's not okay. And with the ufological side was, oh, you can't mix in angels and spirit guides and things to ET stuff because it's completely separate, when in fact it's all together in the same package. And that's where I sort of straddle two paradigms, in the sense of the metaphysical side, where I would meet many within the spiritualist churches that would say, you know, I'm in a group and we're bringing in the angels or our spirit guides, but I can't talk about my blue being that comes and visits me and takes me up on spaceship, because that's not okay. You know.
Got it.
You know, you've got, and of course, with those that were more religious, if they're being brought up in a religious paradigm, it's okay to see a being and call it an angel, but they won't see that as a light being or an energy being, which we would see if it was looking at it from that other lens, that other perspective. And yet it's all, you know, in many cases, it's all one and the same. So getting back to how did I become the alien lady, I think it was the universe deciding that I might as well put it all out there. And that's really what I've done, because, you know, when you get to my advanced years, as I call myself now, you really don't care a stuff what other people say about it. It really doesn't matter.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I think you realize that more and more. I would probably like to acknowledge that it must have taken many leaps of faith and a lot of courage for you to follow that path, because it's far away from nursing and any kind of Western medical healing modality. And I'm interested in what gave you the courage along the pathway? Was it just that you were helping people and getting results, or was it simply that you were inspired and intrigued, or was it a whole mixture?
I think when I talk to those that were dying, and I was in my early 50s then, many of them had regrets and felt like they hadn't been themselves for whatever reason. They'd never shown who they are. And I remember thinking to myself, well, when I die on my deathbed, what is my legacy to my children and to those I love? And it was speaking my truth more than anything, not putting up this mask, which we all do, to please everybody and be what you know they want you to be, which is easy to do. We all can do it. Or do you actually honor yourself and honor your truth and be who you are and say, well, you can love me or not love me. It's all cool. Either way, it doesn't matter, because, you know, this is my truth and I've come here to speak my truth. And what's the point of incarnating if you can't be who you've come here to be? And so
Yes.
my legacy to my kids is exactly that. This is mum. She was probably a pain in the neck some of the time, and she probably embarrassed you a few times, and, you know, did things you didn't always like, but at least you knew who she was. You knew, and you're grieving that. Not a pseudo mum, not a false masked mum, not a theatrical mum, but a real person that came in. And when I realized that, for me, that was the most important thing. That was, for me, vital, that was my example to my kids, is to be yourself no matter what the judgment is out there. And quite honestly, it's the most freeing thing you can have, because when you don't worry about what other people say.
I agree. And this is super inspiring for me, because I'm getting little tasters of that, speaking my truth, being who I was meant to be in this incarnation. And I can see there's a part of me that reflects back saying, this is far away from any kind of expectation that I knew others would have for me. I'm getting into a lot of the weird categories, the eccentric categories, but I'm feeling so good. I'm just going to keep on going. And I love that story around that at least someone would grieve who you actually were, and they could describe that, and they could tell stories of your life and how inspiring that authenticity was, rather than, and I've had this feeling, I don't really know who that person was, because I don't know if they knew who they were either. And that is quite a shame. And I guess it took you gathering that data from all those people close to death to actually realize that that was so important for our human life, to just live it and to play and to enjoy and to just go full power into the weirdness. And I think that's so powerful. I'd love to ask you about your children as well. So they must have been exposed to some really cool information, some really cool stories that you had. Do they resonate with that information? Are they kids that you would call letter people? Do they have encounters themselves? Have they been in that sort of world with you?
To a certain extent, certainly. My eldest, because he's a scientist and of course did the documentary, he was the skeptic that they asked him to be the skeptic. For him, it was challenging because he's got 3 degrees and he's a professional. And he played the skeptic very well, but I know behind that is a very intuitive young man. My daughter is a naturopath, so she's always been running against a lot of the mainstream anyways. She has no problem. I remember her telling her boyfriends that if they were still meat eaters, well, she certainly wasn't going to cook any meat for them, so they might as well. So, they all complied. They absolutely all complied. She just made it clear. If you want to be with me, this is how it works,
I love that.
So she's always been on the same path. And my youngest son is a musician. Again, he's very open to all of this. And, so on the whole, apart from my, when I was married, my ex-husband thinks Mary's lost the plot a long time ago. As far as he's concerned, I went off with the fairies sometime in the recent past. That was good too, because what was useful about being with someone who was so 3D was it showed me how hard it is for many in that belief system, that program to move into the acceptance of their multidimensional going crazy, the issue for somebody opening up to accepting this part of themselves. And I remember saying to, people who have this other than I do, and my answer to them was, have you accepted it in yourself yet? Have you, integrated it yourself? And they will say, well, still got a little bit of, well, that's why you don't meet others like yourself. Because until you accept this in yourself, you're not going to have the frequency that will draw others to you. Because it's all about that.
It is all about that. That's really powerful as well. In the work that I do, I help people to go towards their spirituality. We find them spirit guides, celestial team members. We do it through the framework of shamanic medicine. But I notice that everyone that goes towards it becomes more well. They get more energy, but they do cross and meet many barriers around going crazy, because those programs are so heavy and it's so riddled amongst all of our society that if you're talking to anything that's not just yourself or the person next to you, that you must be going nuts. But then I say to them, if you open up that line of communication, if you go towards it and your body is more well, you feel more healthy, you have more energy, you're sleeping better, then it must be safe for us to have that communication. And it doesn't matter if it's God or Source or the angels or the aliens. If you're feeling better and you're feeling more grounded and your body's responding well, like your nervous system's responding well, then it must be worthy of our pursuit. And I see people go through those barriers and just open up to the person they were always meant to be, because we have the capacity to be in communication with more than just what's in our 3D life. But I do notice that when people don't have that spiritual link, they're not speaking to anything outside of themselves or other humans, there is a frustration there. There is that belief system that's so deeply rooted in it's just us and it's just human and we just carry on and then one day will we not here. And I think, what a tragedy. There's so much magic involved with spiritual beings and them being a part of our reality. And I certainly don't want to miss out on any of it because it's changed so much in my life. And I think that's beautiful. I love that point that you made before about some people are okay to talk to angels, but they couldn't talk to an alien. And some are okay to speak to a spirit guide, but they can't let this other one in. In your experience, is it usually a mixed bag for people? Or you've just noticed that they might block one experience and let another one in?
What I try and ascertain when someone comes to me is their belief system in terms of what is it that resonates with them. Because then I can work with that and maybe expand on it. Because what I try to say to people is that in the matrix, we have it all. And it depends on what we focus on is what we're bringing in to our reality. So for some, if they're still within a very religious mindset, they only maybe feel safe with seeing a being as an angel, for example. Whereas someone else who's got no programming towards religion will see a light being. As I say, they're the same. What I also say to them is, once you allow yourself to trust your sensing, your knowing, your feeling, and that those maybe downloads that you have, or you're starting to see energy, or you're starting to see orbs of light, once you start allowing that and honoring it, more comes in and more understanding comes in as well. The problem, you're quite right, is with modern psychology. They have only allowed for the last few hundred years left brain thinking to decide what our human experience is valid. And that's everything from the five senses. What they're ignoring completely is our intuition, our knowing, our sensing, our feeling, our past life memory, our interactions with other beings. So they're saying you're just this physical vehicle, when we all know we're more than our physical vehicle. When people have out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, shamanic experiences, etc., etc. All of these are showing that we have a consciousness that can leave the physical body and is separate and can operate in a multidimensional way. So I say, the problem really is with how we have been educated into
Yes.
shutting down all those abilities because we're told they're not valid. You're fanciful, you're imaginative,
Yeah.
you're allowed to be, these. So people have had experiences, even as a small child, but have not been able to trust them because they're
Yeah.
told they can't be trusted. And
Yes.
so what it means is they're going around with one eye open and they're thinking they know what reality is, when in fact we're going around like this thinking we know, when in fact we're missing all of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I notice that the more I explore, the more I don't know. And it seems that that uncertainty is quite a calming force for me. Because if I think about my life 10 years ago, there was so much certainty that I needed in order to feel I knew what was right and wrong. And now I'm so relaxed in the idea that I really don't know that much in this human form. I don't have capacity to know all the things. I learn little bits and realize how small I am in comparison to all those outer worldly energies. And I think this is just bliss. I can relieve myself of right and wrong, knowing everything and all that certainty that used to be a part of my life. And I can just dance around knowing that there's beings out there that can help me. There's beings out there that are so comforting and so knowledgeable and will visit from time to time. And that's brought so much healing to me, and I see it in other people. I would love to know. I have quite a few friends at the moment, adult friends being diagnosed with ADHD, dyslexia, and a lot of these other conditions. Have you noticed through your research and your data that there's a link between specifically ADHD and creativity?
It's a good question. And of course, I write about this in The New Human, because what
Yes.
I noticed was that those parents that were having experiences, and we already know it's an intergenerational experience. In other words, it goes through genetic lines. So one of the parents might have had experiences, grandparents, etc. What I noticed was some of the new generations of human were indicating that they had what was being labeled a dysfunction, which is ADHD, Asperger's, for example, some forms of autism, dyslexia. And I remember sort of saying, well, how does that compute to an upgrade? And it was absolutely fascinating, because the sense right away was we had to wire them differently so they wouldn't be programmed back into the old matrix, which is inaccurate.
Thank you
It's
for saying that.
inaccurate and it's a false reality. So the best way is to wire them differently so they can't be pulled into that. And what do we do with ADHD? We dose them to
Yes.
lower them so we can program them.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much.
And one of the clues, and I often get the information this way, is a lovely gentleman in Hong Kong called Neil Gold said to me he realized he was ADHD in his 50s. And he said, Mary, I always saw a greater reality and didn't understand what that was. And he wrote the book Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind. What he retranslated ADHD as always dialed into higher dimensions.
Oh, that's amazing. That's incredible.
So that's what they are. And that's what are the upgrades. I mean, they're given other titles in metaphysics like indigo, crystal,
Sure.
children of light, gold, in children, all they looking at the energy terms that mainstream understand, they are often seen as this dysfunction. And what we're really, one of the interesting things is a good friend of mine, Dr. Lena Olsen, a molecular biologist in Sweden, calls them letter people because she was one. She had ADHD, she had Asperger's and whatever. And she did testing on the physical attributes of those letter people. And she said they had 5 times more sensitivity to touch, 5 times more sensitivity to smell.
Wow.
Hearing is greater frequency of hearing, greater visual spectrum. All in, that's the physical side. And that's without them also being more multidimensional in awareness. So you've got all those physical traits that are expanded. And she's tested for this. So she did scientific testing to prove that this was.
Wow.
The case. She also was able to see there are certain minerals, certain vitamins that stabilize them if they have them. So that and there's also, looking at diet, there's lots of things that the parent can do without drugs to stabilize the ADHDs. And I put it all in the New Human because it's not enough to highlight this. What are the solutions? Are the solutions? How do we understand them? And it was not only giving them the right kind of diet that they need, but also understanding the educational needs of these children, and because of how they operate, because they're hypersensitive. Many of them are empaths, for example. And this is why they struggle in schools where there's a lot of energy and a lot of things that they struggle with. They often, withdraw because they can't deal with the impact of all the emotions that they're tapping into or whatever. So we've really got to explore how they experience their reality, and then how can we help them to work with that in a society that is still struggling to understand how different they really are and what they need. And we're at the cusp of that now.
Yeah, and I think it's such a beautiful discussion. I've certainly been having this discussion with a lot of friends and family members as well. It's like those diagnoses, whether they come in at a young age or an adult age, it gives us an understanding that there is a different wiring. So I know me personally, if a friend or a loved one has that diagnosis or they're exploring it, it tells me that I can then be a little bit more creative and understanding with how they're wired, and be a bit more like, well, what suits you and your energy levels and your diet and the way that you're programmed? Because it's different to me. I'm not going to try and organize you like I would organize myself. And that's been really powerful, even on a level that is human to human for our connection. It's like everyone is wired differently. We're all individuals. We all have many past lives and stories that go over many, many eons and many different dimensions. So to think that we all need to do things in a human way, the same way, is just starting to become so ridiculous for me. And how did we all get through that education system? My friends that are now being diagnosed would be the ones that didn't fit in, would be the ones that the teachers said you'll never make it, will be the ones that couldn't do the basic parts of school. And that's a whole lot of conditioning and self-worth issues that then have to be dealt with as an adult. It's like they were almost convinced that they weren't good enough compared to other students, other kids. And that's so tragic to see. I mean, these beautiful people are aware, they're very intuitive, they're very creative, they're very special in my eyes. And it's been a really important part of my work to just learn about them and to understand how they need to function, different energy patterns, different bodies completely. And I think that's going to open up really beautiful awareness for all of us, particularly as the kids are still coming through, right? I've still got friends that have kids that are having trouble at school, and I can see that they're gifted, intuitive, creative, and they're not going to go well in that model. How do we support them going through that experience that might be more stressful than the next kid, or one that's a bit wired differently? So I really do value all that research that you've done and all that network that you've created to actually provide language and understanding for a lot of us, that it's not something to fear, it's not something that's wrong, it is actually those upgrades already starting to happen. And if that many upgraded humans are coming through, it tells me hopefully that we're looking towards an education upgrade where it's not so regimented and it's not so structured in this old belief system, that we can actually learn and grow in a different way. And that's really exciting. So do you think the awareness of these upgrades, these gifted people, also awareness of non-human contact and those experiences that people are having, do you think that's going to become somewhat common knowledge soon, somewhat accepted by the whole in any way?
Well, I've been heartened because when I wrote The New Human, I realized it was pretty out there. And I actually remember writing at the very end of the book, if anything in this book challenges you, then that's a really good thing. Maybe you need to look at why it challenges you, because I want people to be challenged with this whole system of thinking you know it all and you think how it all is, when we don't know so much. There's so much we don't know. And so what fascinated me is getting, contacts and emails from educators, from clinical psychologists, for example, and social workers and people working in the field with children and what have you, saying, I know I've got some of these children coming to see me. The parents are completely oblivious, but I can see these new children, what have you, and asking me, well, what can they do to bypass the parents to reach the child who plainly needs some understanding? And it's a difficult one because the parents are still not aware of what's going on. How do you get them into a place where they can accept a different way of maybe counseling a child or supporting a child through their education and what have you? And one of the things that I said to them is it's language. If you're using metaphysical language, you're going to lose them. But I said there's ways you can say the same things in what I call everyday language. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying to them, well, I think they're a bit psychic, you can say, I think they're quite intuitive. They sense, don't they?
Yes.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's, and that is, it's been really important for me, because if you keep language to the metaphysical new age kind of language, it can distance people from getting what they need or understanding, because not everyone is au fait with that kind of language or whatever. And I deal with a lot of people that are opening up for the first time to all their multidimensional selves, and they can be quite scared of words like psychic and clairvoyance and clairaudience and all that stuff. I say, right, well, what, as a counselor, that's what you do. You alter the language to suit the person you're working with. So if it's a tradie, you talk in a way a tradie would talk. You don't use fancy language. You don't become an academic. So for me, I think that it's really important that we develop normal language for this. And that's why I say they're wired differently. I could use lots of other different words for that. But that makes sense to people. They don't think quite the same way as someone else. And I've done that deliberately to demystify something that can sometimes seem too esoteric for some. Immediately that's too scary for me, or I don't understand it and what have you. If you've got someone who's a plumber, for example, and they're used to being very down to earth. With a plumber, I'll say, do you just get a knowing sometimes about something? Yeah, I just get that feeling. Yeah. That,
Yeah.
you see what I mean? So I do think that sometimes we are our own worst enemy if we're not too careful about how we convey information, and normalizing it is really big for me. Is
Yes.
helping people understand this is normal. This is what you were born with. This isn't
Yeah.
just a gift for some people. Everyone has that, and it's part of who you are. You've just forgotten. You just need to be reminded of how it works. Let me show
Mm.
you how it works. Let me show
Yeah.
you how you can utilize that in your everyday lives and normalize it along with your 3D cells. So what you're doing is you're opening both eyes, not just going around with one eye closed. So we're going to
Yeah.
open both up so that you can work in harmony with your 3D self. Sometimes your logic and analysis is important, obviously, but your multidimensional is actually adding to that to help you get a full picture of what you need to know or understand. So for me, that's been important with talking to educators and whatever, is okay, what does the child tell you? How do they share their experience with you? And giving them language. And that's why I have a questionnaire for kids, because
Mm.
parents don't always know what should they ask them about
Right.
what's going on for them, you know, and getting them to draw what they're seeing, for example.
Yeah.
Because a lot of parents, they said, I didn't realize my kid was able to do that, or was able to do this, because they didn't know what to ask them. And that's
Yeah.
the same with all of this is, when I say to somebody, okay, so do you ever get downloads? Do you sometimes find yourself knowing things that you didn't realize you knew or whatever? Okay, so you're getting that as well. Do you ever want to write symbols, or do you ever, feel energies around, keeping it very normal, because this is normal. This is,
Yes.
this is the most, if I say nothing else during this interview, is this is the normal you, not the shut
Yeah.
down one. This is
Mm-hmm.
this is the norm. You've just forgotten how good you are.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And I love that. And I think it's going to be comforting for a lot of people that listen to this, because we do isolate ourselves when we have experiences. I know lots of parents that don't feel they have the language or the resources to help a child that's having difficulty. And when they see them not fitting in, they get worried and scared for them. They just don't know what to do. And I think it's been probably such a gift that there have been people out there that have experiences that are opening up, and they have a practitioner like you to go to that can normalize it and can help them to go towards it and integrate it. So, do you still do one-on-one counseling sessions with people?
Absolutely. And although I'm not traveling, I'm very fortunate that with technology, hypnosis isn't a problem. Any other
Great.
sessions are not a problem. If they want to open up and to understand more of how they work multidimensionally, I can show them how to do that. Because you and I know that in the quantum world, everything is connected. So if I'm
Yeah.
talking to you, your super conscious, your higher self, or your team, or whatever, it's all there. So
Yeah.
it's been a bonus. That's part of technology that I think is been amazing, is that I
Yeah.
still operate. I can do online conferences and what have you. Amazing. And it's been important because what has happened due to the chaos on the planet right now and all the things that are going on, so many are being activated and
Yes.
waking up. And the positive with that has been, because they've not been able to get on with their usual everyday busy lives, and they've been forced to sit and work out maybe more of what really matters, because they've not been able to go chasing off to the gym or to the kids and doing all the sports and whatever it is you get involved with because you do.
Yeah.
They've started to realize what matters in my life is my family. And all of that
Mm.
has been a real activation for many people, into opening up more and saying, I want to do something different now. I need to do something different. And that's been really profound and fascinating to see, given, you know, all the other stuff that's been going on as well. It really has been a time of awakening for me.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I've had people in my clinic that I think would otherwise have not sought out help for the experiences that they're having, but they are just at a point of desperation, and then they open up. They're like, I'll try anything now because I'm getting so many stop signs, so many closed doors. I'm so uncomfortable. I can feel things changing. It's happening very quickly, and I just don't know what to do. It's almost like a spiritual crisis before the awakening. And I think we wouldn't have seen that otherwise if we weren't made so uncomfortable. And you're right, if that 3D matrix world wasn't such a mess, there'd be so many less people actually exploring this part of themselves. I'm wondering, the people that come to see you, you must get a whole mixed bag of experiences, people from all walks of life. Is there some form of your work or a part of your work that is being called to the most? Is it alien encounters? Is it that people just need counselling for their experiences? Is it the children? Who would you say are seeking your help the most at the moment?
Well, it is a mix. I'll have parents talking about their experiences and how little Johnny is talking about his special friend taking up on spacecraft or whatever, and how best can they support that. So there's quite a bit of that going on, but primarily it's been people opening up multidimensionally and being a little bit uncomfortable with it, or fearful, or not sure how much they can trust. There's always this business of, is that my imagination, or is this actually happening? And I'm not really communicating with whoever it is. And one of the things that I often say, almost as a teaser, is that many intuitives that work in healing, work in various ways, readings or whatever it is, coming and and they're saying, you know, I'll say, how is your connection? They'll say, oh, it's great. It comes in beautifully and all the rest of it. And I say to them this, so who is it that's giving you the information? And there's this black look. Well, I'm not really sure. So my answer to that is, so you're talking to your best friend behind a wooden door, are you? Because you haven't got a clue who they are. And I said, don't you think it's about time you found out, you know, who it is? Well, I suppose that would be useful. I said, yeah. I said, like, why are they with you? How many lifetimes have you had together? How many's in your team? What do they do to support you? How do they support you? You know, just the things you'd ask your best friend.
The details.
Sort of detail about, you know, because I said, you know, I don't know about you, but if I've got a best friend, I want to know all about them. You know, I want to know all of that. And if you want to have confidence, you want to know. You want to know exactly who that source is.
Yeah.
And to qualify what they're saying to you. And that's the other thing is, well, they told me this, and then I'll say to them, did you understand that? Well, it sounded all right. And I'll say to them, that's not really okay, is it? You know, you want to say, I didn't really get that. How about you show me some other way so I get it, you know?
Yes.
I said, can you do that? And I said, actually, yes, you can. Because that's exactly what they want you to do, is to ask questions, to seek out new understanding and all the rest of it. So even though they're operating and, you know, on a reasonable level as far as they're concerned, there's those little extra things that you can highlight that will help them if you show them how it works. I use this terminology, which you'll appreciate, as I say, well, you're sort of riding the bike. You just need to know where the lights and the brakes are, and I'll show you where they are. And then you can really tricks then, you know, or whatever.
Yes.
So it's just giving them an operating model that they can trust, that they have confidence in. And it's
Yes.
amazing once you show them how easy it is, and that that they're almost there. It's amazing how then you say, right, off you go now, because you can do it. Because I'm saying, that's the big one, is us being empowered. It's
Yeah.
us taking responsibility for our own understanding, our own awareness, rather than looking out there for the latest guru or, whatever it is out there. No, we're actually here with all the tools we need right now. We were born with them. How about you start working with them? But
Yeah.
we are programmed, as you know, not to trust ourselves, but to
Yeah.
trust everybody else. Anyone with a piece of paper that says I'm good at something or whatever. Or
Absolutely.
it's always someone out there that's better than us. I know
Yeah.
people, seriously, Heather, I know people that have going on one course after another course after another course after another course. And I'm going,
Yes.
actually start doing something. you know?
Yep.
You
Yep.
know?
I've met them. Yeah.
It's just like they spent a fortune. Like all of it is, I'm still not good enough. I still don't
Yes.
know enough. And when are you going to know enough?
Yep.
And it's that. It's about saying it's time. You took responsibility for your own truth, your own resonance, and once you do that, then there's no stopping you. And that's what
Absolutely.
what's it all about.
Absolutely. And thank you for saying all that. That's so comforting for me because I just thought it was the way that I was wired. I would take people towards, so who are you talking to? Where are they coming from? What are their names? What are they here to help you with? What's the team like? Who have you got? No wonder you're confused because you're speaking to a whole room of people, but you don't know who they are. And then once we clarify and they see all of those spiritual resources, they can feel and hear and see the detail of them. I say, okay, what are you going to do with this team? Because it's a very specific team. I think maybe the way you thought you were going to work isn't the way you're going to work. Depending on, do you have indigenous ancestors? Do you have aliens? Do you have angels? They've all got different skill sets. Now, what are we going to use them for? And one of the things that still keeps me curious is when people are expecting a certain type of spirit guide and they get something that they weren't expecting and they go, oh, I don't think I want that. I think, well, you've got it. And whatever worthiness or resistance you have to that, we can now dissolve because you've got this very powerful team member. I think you should use them. They're eager to help you. And I ask them to work with their team in a way that is empowering. So if they've chosen you to help you in your human incarnation, then let's go to work. And they go, oh, can I ask them to do things? Of course you can ask them to do things. They're waiting for you. Can I tell them to not do that and do that? You can try, see what they say. But that is that empowering level. And I notice that that can dissolve all the worthiness programs around it. And it's so much more organized for me than just speaking to a higher power of some kind. And people are surprised with the big teams that they have. I was a little bit nervous coming onto this call because I could feel that you've worked with a lot of different celestials and I could feel the resonance of that and how big it was. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a whole lot of energy. And it doesn't matter to me whether it's a Zoom call or in person. I can feel that sort of force coming through. And it's such an honor to talk to you about these things. I think this information is so muchly needed, particularly in our community. I notice a lot of people around me, they're eager to learn more. These people that I'm surrounded by are often, they want the experiences. They wish they had more encounters. They're craving it. And sometimes they want it so badly that they go out there and try and find it through external means. And I think, well, you just have to sit and accept and allow it in and start speaking. But we've become so triggered, so stressed that sitting in silence has become such a daunting practice. I love all of your stories and I have so many questions, but I'll try and keep it to 60 minutes because I value your time. So for you in your career moving forward, as an educator, as a speaker, as an author, as a counselor. Where do you see is the best use of our focus and attention, even if that's on an individual level, supporting our children? Where's the best place that we can focus on to help our evolution towards everyone being more aware and more healthy and more multidimensional? If there was one area that we could focus on, what would that be, in your opinion?
Well, I encourage every person to speak their truth, because they've come here with that role, that mandate to be who they are. They're a cosmic being with all the awareness, understanding of that. They've come with that frequency. If we all do that, then it's a done deal. To change this planet, it's a done deal. But
Wow.
the shamanic way is to transcend human fears so you can
Yes.
operate in a multidimensional reality. So the challenge for us as a species is to transcend those human fears that we all have of judgment, all these different things that, and fear of this or fear of that, or whatever it is you're fearful of. We've come here with that frequency, and what prevents that frequency from doing what it's come here to do, you as an individual, is when we allow ourselves to be shut in the box and fearful of whatever it is. And so if I can say to anyone, and that was the one thing that I was saying to people, is when you're truly who you are, then there's nothing going to stop you from doing everything that you choose to do. And I have, and that was my example, was I'm going to speak my truth. I don't really care whether it's okay for you or not. It's okay for me, because I've come here to be that frequency. So if it's anything you want to do, or you feel you want to do for this planet, I would say be yourself, be your true self, and you'll have done everything that you need to do.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Just one more question, because they're nagging me to ask it. For myself, for everybody out there, what big of a role does diet play in speaking our truth, in understanding our wiring, in becoming multidimensional? Is there a direct link? Is it really important? Is it the missing link at times for a lot of people? How important is diet for us in our human incarnation?
Well, one of the things we missed as I as a nurse, very little was ever talked about with diet.
Sure.
And the same with doctors as well. They're some of the most unhealthy people on the planet. And if you look at hospital food as well, you're not getting nutrition, not getting anything. So there's medical science showing you that they pay very little attention primarily to what food is. And food, of course, is a frequency.
Yes.
And ultimately, you've got to look at what is that frequency that you are taking into your body. Unfortunately, we know that a lot of the food as it was once is no longer the same, that it's been altered and changed and whatever. And one of the things Dr. Lena Olson was very clear about with all the ADHDs and all the new humans coming in is organic foods, if possible, for example.
Okay.
The same with, the water. One of the things that you can do even with what you're taking in, and knowing that if it can be organic, obviously with the water can be as pure as possible, is to also be aware that what you take in, you are giving, you are saying to that food, you are going to be there for my health, my well-being, my centers. So you are bringing your frequency, because we can change anything.
We
when
can.
You have a 9-year-old that told me quite clearly that she can change change water, and she said she can heal water with her thoughts.
Wow.
We have to be aware that we're 70 to 80% water. What are we putting into that through our thoughts? So our thoughts as well as the food.
Yes. Okay. So the frequency of food is important, but we can actually control our own frequency and use that all in our favor through our thoughts and everything. So diet is important, but I guess we need to believe and dictate our own frequency above all else, because we could change the molecular structure of food as it hits our stomachs, right? So that's super powerful. And if we can understand that, I think we'll get closer to speaking our truth, because we will just be in more alignment with how powerful we really are, even while we're in this human suit and it gets a bit clunky and awkward at times. Oh, that's so beautiful, Mary. I really appreciate your time. I had so much fun. I could probably spend 3 more hours picking your brain and asking you questions, but thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom. And I'm sure there's going to be so many people watching this that appreciate you too. I've been directing a lot of people to your latest book, The New Human, and all of your resources as well. So from all of us, we say thank you so much. Such a blessing.
Heather, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for all your tireless efforts to put this out to the public, because that's how we can do this, is to spread the frequency and the understanding. So thank you for all your efforts too.
Oh, thank you so much. Go well, and I might see you again soon, hopefully. Thank you, Mary. Heaps of love. Bye.